So next up, we're going to talk about type declarations and specifically how to work with third-party JavaScript libraries in a TypeScript ecosystem. But let's start with this concept of type declarations. This is actually nothing new to us. We've already seen type declaration files. They are special files in TypeScript that don't end in just .ts, but instead it's .d.ts. D for declaration, I assume. It is a type declaration file, and those files serve a very special purpose. In a .d.ts file, we would find no implementation details, no code that is ever actually going to be run as JavaScript, no output, but instead we find files that only contain type information, declarations of types, which TypeScript can then look at and use to understand and enforce type rules on our code. So we write our actual code that will execute in a .ts file, but then .d.ts files contain very important type information. And so far, we've actually seen some of these. I have a new folder here. If I do a tsc init, and I'll just touch, let's just do source touch source / index.ts, some TypeScript file. If I start working in here, whatever I do, for example, if I do console.log something, TypeScript knows about the console, and the way that it knows about that type, it knows, all these different methods and their signatures. It knows about them if I go to type definition, because there is a console defined somewhere, an interface console. You can see the file that it's in, lib.dom.d.ts. So there's that d.ts, the declaration file. And we've seen these files before when we talked about the DOM. This is one example. It's a very, very long type declaration, but the DOM is a very complicated set of methods and objects. So every single piece is described here. There's no code that will produce some sort of output. There's no real logic. It's a bunch of interfaces or maybe classes or type aliases. In this case, a lot of interfaces so far, describing to TypeScript, here are the types you need to know about for the DOM. Here's an audio worklet node options interface, or the console is the one that we just looked at. We know the console well, right? Here's the console interface. It's a pretty straightforward one. It just has a bunch of methods. Things like clear, accepts no parameters and returns nothing. But then log is right here. It accepts whatever we pass into it of any type. It's one of the few methods that actually does pretty much everything in the console. Will accept things of any type. You give it a boolean, a number, a string, it doesn't matter. An array, an object, that's just how console.log works. It's a pretty simple interface, but it describes the console here. And again, this is a file that TypeScript knows about. We talked about the lib, right? If we go to our tsc.config, or tsconfig rather, .json, there's this lib property, which right now is commented out, so we're relying on the default, but the default is going to include this DOM type declaration. It knows about the DOM. That's why I can do things like, document dot, and then get all these methods. I can do get element by ID, and it knows how that method is typed. It accepts some string. It returns an HTML element or null. So this is one example of a type declaration file. It's one that happens to be built in. But what I want to talk about mostly in this section is working with third-party libraries that are not just included as part of TypeScript, but actually things we go and install and use, and what steps we need to take, if any, to tell TypeScript about the types associated with those libraries. So that's our goal. We're going to work with a couple of simple libraries. We won't build anything revolutionary, not even close, but we are going to talk about working with third-party code, third-party type declaration files. Do we have to go get them ourselves? Do they come with libraries? Where do we find them? All that is coming up.